Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Live in Italy magazine, Chat with an Expat feature. I'm very pleased today to welcome Vicky Benison of the highly successful Pasta Grannies, which you probably know. They have over 2 million followers across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. She has received many recognitions and awards for her work documenting Nonne, or grannies, who even in their 80s or 90s are still making pasta from scratch. Just incredible work. These traditions, recipes, and the history can all be found in her new book, which is called Pasta Grannies, Comfort Cooking, which we'll be talking about, is new, but also the second edition of the first book with the same name. My name is Lizzie Morales, and I am the editor of Live in Italy magazine, a travel and lifestyle publication dedicated to all things Italy. Hi, Vicky.
Hello, thank you for inviting me on the show.
Welcome. I'm very excited to have you. We're going to start off with a bit of introduction to you, just pretending that somebody doesn't know who you are, Pasta Grannies. I can't imagine, because everybody that follows us loves Italy. So tell us a bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
So I was actually born in Kenya. So my childhood was spent there, and then Botswana. In Southern Africa. So I had an expat lifestyle. I think you're going to come on to that question.
Definitely.
And so I lived out there, and then was sent home to school when I was about 11. So I've never really felt the UK was home. I mean, it's where my family is these days and stuff. So I'm one of those sort of dislocated people. That sort of informed how I approach food, because it's a way of getting to know a culture. It's a way of thinking about home, that kind of thing. So yes, it's a wonderful childhood. I had a lot of physical freedom, growing up on a farm and having horses to ride and that kind of thing. So it was lovely.
That sounds amazing. And you have a strong connection then to the earth. Right, we'll talk about later. So I think, and I couldn't find evidence in the book or just watching some of your videos, which I've tried to watch as many as possible, is how did you get to Italy? Because I know you're living between Marche and London now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Yes. So my connection to Italy goes back a very long way. In fact, when my parents came home from Africa in those days, it was by boat. And so the boat used to dock in Venice, and Italians taught me to walk. So that was the first trip home for my parents, the Italian sailors on the cruise ship. And followed up by, when I was older, you'd dock in Venice and eat, spaghetti and rice and stuff like that. So it was always an adventure, and always loved Italy as a consequence. And so I chose Marche. Really, I'd had a flat in London for many years, and I wanted to be a grown-up and have a large kitchen. And the only way I could afford that was actually by moving out of London. And if you're going to move out of London, you may as well move somewhere that's got better weather, a better climate, better culture. Well, not better culture, but a sort of more sunshiny one. And so I chose Marche because my parents have a home in Greece. And so that was on the way. The port of Ancona, which is in Marche, is the stopping off point to getting to Greece. So that's where I chose Marche. Bit long-winded.
No, that's fine. So do you have like a farmhouse in Marche? Because you're saying the kitchen is important. So I imagine it must be central.
Yes. So it's actually an old schoolhouse. And to make my kitchen, I actually knocked 3 classrooms into one. So, and I'm actually speaking from London. This is my husband. It's a long story, but my husband re-met me. We dated when we were 16. So I'd moved to Italy, and he had this flat in London. So we've never quite made out where we're going to be. But I'm an Italian resident; he isn't. So
Which is interesting. So, how did you become an Italian resident? Because a lot of people we speak to, or it's through descendancy, or
So I'm not a citizen, I'm a resident.
Yes.
So that's a different thing. That's citizenship is much, much harder. So residency, it's how I bought the house in the first place. You know, you buy, you moved. It was pre-Brexit, so it was much easier to establish yourself. You know, I sort of filled out all the right forms and have stayed long enough and that kind of thing. So I'm now resident.
Oh, that's excellent. And happy in both places.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I you know, it would fry my brain if I had to work out, you know, it's only 180 days every 360 or something. Is that right? 90 every 180. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't have
because of, the amount of time that you can be. Yeah, we've kind of read that they're going to try and be more flexible about that.
Oh, are they? Oh, good.
Yes. No, of course. Enjoy. So
thank you.
Talk about a little bit about your career path prior to doing Pasta Grannies.
So I'm 63. So I've had several different jobs in my lifetime before discovering food. So I'm actually I worked as a management consultant, and then I specialized in international development. So I had lots of stints abroad. I had 2 years in South Africa after the end of apartheid, Siberia, Kazakhstan, all sorts of strange places. So I was looking at small business development and that kind of thing. And then when I met my husband, you know, that sort of I had started to move more into what I call sort of public sector charitable work, you know, like UNICEF, consulting for charities like that and NGOs, because it's a slightly easier to combine that with a personal life and a family life. So when I met Billy, I pretty much gave that up to be married and stay in one place. And that was fine. It was an active choice. It wasn't like, oh God, I've got to give it up or anything. It was. I was ready to leave that line of business. And I'd always written about food, you know, letters home, that kind of thing. And I thought, well, let's start doing more of that. So I was kind of doing it at the same time of consulting. So I combined the two, and then sort of made the jump into full-time writing at around just about 2007. So that's how I sort of made the transition into food writing. And then that kind of developed further into YouTube, because researching Italian food, because I'd moved out there and was just interested and didn't have a particular view, was that I noticed that it was only older women who were making pasta by hand on a daily basis. And so I thought, oh, you know, we must make a record of that, because, you know, there's all this diversity of pasta shapes and that kind of thing.
Right.
And the physicality of pasta making was such that you need, you know, even taking photos isn't enough. You need to be able to sort of capture the rhythm of it. And so I picked up a camera, and if you look at very early Pasta Grannies videos, you can see there's kind of like one camera that isn't moving. I'm there because I don't know what I'm doing. You know, so the videos have definitely evolved over the years, and now thanks to the success of the book, I've now have a team.
Excellent.
Yes, I'm. So that's good. This is good. You know, the photography is now better.
Yeah, although you are doing the photography, because I received a photo of you with the camera in your hand.
Yes, I do. Yes, I mean, but it's not. I'm not. You know, it's not relying on me. That's the main.
No, that's great. And I've seen how the videos evolve. Although I really think your single shot videos are really still great, and it's been consistent. And we'll get into that, the whole subject matter evolving from pasta until the grannies kind of part, which is really interesting too. But I just want to backtrack a bit because sometimes our readers are curious. So you did say Billy, so I'm guessing you are not married to an Italian, because that sometimes comes up.
No. I'm married to a Scot.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you have any children? You talk about, I think, your grandson in the book.
Yes. So Billy McQueen, that's my husband. He has two children, Megan and Charlie, and Megan now has Raf, who's our grandson. So he's 4.5. Well, I'll just turn that down to quit that one.
No, that's
so he's fine. 4.5. So yeah.
Does he like it in Italy? I'm guessing that they visit back and forth.
No, not a 4.5-year-old. He has been. We tend to kind of stay in this country for holidays, and they're down the road. We get on the train, and in 20 minutes we're with them, and we're in fact picking him up for a sleepover next week. So he doesn't go back and forth in the way that I do.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe when he gets older.
Maybe, yes, definitely.
So you mentioned how you came about getting the house in Marche, but do you speak Italian? Because obviously through the videos, which you're going to get to in a minute, I mean, you're hearing the language all the time. Yes.
I mean, the downside is that I'm kind of going back and forward. So my Italian bumps along the bottom, if you like. I study it. I have a weekly lesson with Nick, who I met on our travels in Sardinia. His dad is one of the mayors that helped organize some of the ladies that we filmed in Sardinia. When I first arrived out there, I mean, I rapidly discovered that all sort of language courses, online language courses and apps and stuff are actually they kind of equip you for immigration. They don't equip you to deal with the fact that your electricity needs reconnecting and that kind of thing. So you're basically you are sort of thrown in at the deep end, and you have to kind of communicate somehow. And most people, Italians are lovely about wanting to help and speed you along with your Italian. So you kind of learn the basics and certain structures and stuff, and that kind of gets you through quite rapidly. So yes, I do speak Italian. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always but it's always I have a slight thing about speaking it in public because I'm so slow. It's like, then it's kind of the genders on everything, and it's like, how I must get this right. And then of course, by the time you've sort of thought about the correct structure, the conversation has moved on. So it's like, I kind of seize up.
And I guess then there's also the challenge of dialects, because I think I was reading about Cici last night, like some of these Nonne, which we'll get into as well. They live in very remote places. So is that a challenge as well? You must have to sometimes find a translator, I guess.
Yes, I mean, so I know when I don't understand a thing that they are speaking Italian dialect, and usually at that point we get the families involved rather than obviously Livia, my granny finder, is Italian. Andrea, my cameraman, is Italian. So and most people these days do speak some Italian, and they may be more comfortable with the dialect, and that's why we invite them to speak in dialect rather than Italian, to make them feel more comfortable when we're filming. And then we get the families to translate those bits which we are all scratching our heads going, we don't know.
Yeah. But it's the language of food in the end.
Yes. Yes, and it's very visual. So, it's only when they're talking about their lives and stuff like that, we want to make sure we've got it right.
So what year was it that you started the channel?
2015, I think.
Wow.
I mean, the thing is that I didn't say, today I am going to start a YouTube channel. I'd started taking there was this fairly new thing called YouTube, and it was an obvious place to park videos that I'd done, which I weren't doing every week. It was just when I was finding grandmothers. And so, it would happen sort of maybe once or twice a month or something like that. And then, the algorithm sucks you in, to get an audience, you have to be regular about it. And so then the whole thing sort of gradually took over my life. It's just.
Yeah, we've talked about the algorithm. You're not the first. And obviously we live it too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the original idea was just, like you said, that you wanted to document this that you found interesting, right?
Yes. Yeah. I never anticipated, I think the total across, the three platforms, the three main platforms are 2.5 million thereabouts followers.
Incredible. And I know it's no easy task. And I will say, within that 2 million, when I checked, because I checked last week and I checked last night, you're at 888,000 subscribers. That is phenomenal.
On YouTube, yes.
Yeah, and for anyone that we know, we've spoken to who have YouTube channels, it's no easy feat at all. And I imagine, because in this time, there's been this kind of this food explosion on the internet. So how have you been able to kind of continue and capture and grow, your niche? How do you think that that's happened?
Well, it's a niche. It's very niche. I mean, you say to anybody, I'm going to have a successful channel filming old ladies in Italy. They just laugh at you. I mean, I suppose it's evolved slightly in that it is about the pastas, but I always say that people come for the pasta and stay for the grannies. So it's about little sort of little windows into that life, into that generation, and I think typical of women that age everywhere is not just Italian grandmothers, but hugely welcoming. All that experience and hospitality is something that's innate to them, and that's very attractive and comforting to viewers. So in the beginning, I think, I started to be followed by chefs, because they were interested in all these different sort of pasta shapes that we were making. But I think now it's as much about the stories of the women, so we always give them a little bit of space to say something. Not all our ladies want to talk about themselves, and that's absolutely fine. We're not there to interrogate them. That's their choice. Yeah. And
I'm sure, if anybody who might be watching this or reading the interview, you can let us know. But me personally, I find them incredibly relaxing and also humbling, because like you said, this is just not a cute thing. This is you mentioned in your book, I mean, these are women, like some of them are well into their 90s. So we're talking about almost a century living through the wars, poverty in Italy, which was extreme poverty, migration. There's so many things that factor into this, just making use of what they have, and still doing it. I mean, I've rolled dough, and the whole kneading part, and it's a workout. So I can't imagine being, in my 80s or 90s. So do you get that reaction from people? Let's say the viewers.
Yes, of course. Yes, very much so. And through the pandemic, it was very noticeable that, viewing figures went through the roof. And sort of everybody was at home, but people wrote to me. It wasn't just that they were watching it. And I had very touching emails and messages from people saying how watching the channel helped them cope with the stresses that they were going through.
Wow.
And I think that's partly because the grannies have kind of been through hard times before and have come out the other side.
Yeah.
And also it's just like sort of a visual ASMR, is that it is a soothing thing to watch pasta being made, and you know, that sort of rhythm and stuff is comforting. And the
Of
smiley.
course it is. Yeah. And one thing I find incredible is, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but most of your videos are, you know, under 15 minutes. And I can't help but think to myself, besides them doing all the cooking and prepping, because I was watching one where she's talking about making the chicken stock, but then she already had one made, kind of like the cooking show. And then also having obviously the finished and ready pasta ready. But you managed to pack so much in. Like, you're such a great storyteller in like 10 to 15 minutes. But what is the real time that goes behind making that one segment?
Okay, so for something like a chicken stock, we ask them to make some. I mean, we pay for their ingredients and we pay them. So especially, and that's particularly important, you know, when it's expensive things like meat. So we ask them to prep that ragu or that stock before, as you would with a cooking show, before we arrive. And then we film we film 2 people a day, sometimes 3 if they're very close together. So we will spend between 2 to 3 hours with each lady. So we've just recently been in Abruzzo. So, you know, we will travel around a particular area of Abruzzo, and then 2 ladies a day. And then we will also do B-roll around, you know, we try and get pictures of their surroundings and stuff like that. So, yes, that's what we do. And then we stay as long as it takes to make the recipe. And usually we're invited to eat. Because, you know, they're not making... Isn't
that the best part?
It is. You know, our wonderful women, they make the food for us. They don't make it for YouTube or the audience or anything.
That's
you know,
beautiful.
This is a thing that they have to feed the people that have come through their door. So, yes, that's so, you know, we sit down to eat several times a day.
Yes. Yes, which is hard, but you have to do it, right?
Yes.
I mean, if it's several times a day. So how do you find the grannies then?
So I have a granny finder. Her name is Livia De Giovanni, and she lives in Faenza. And she's helped me for the last, I think we've worked out, it's now the last 6 years we've had, Livia and I have worked together. And so, for example, we think we're going to stay in northern Italy for the next time we get, just before Christmas, we'll go out and film. And so we know that we haven't been to Mantua, for example, and that there's a ravioli there that needs filming. So she will then contact various organizations in that area and see if they can recommend anyone. And then it's a question of approaching the families. We'd never approach grannies on their own. It's always by their families. And then sometimes, you know, the grannies say, the women say no. So that's absolutely fine. And quite often they say, no, I don't want to, I'm too shy or whatever.
Right. And
so until we sort of keep finding people, you know, until one of them says yes. I mean, lots do say yes, thank goodness. So usually there's sort of, you know, a granddaughter or a niece or something like that who's in the background, who's sort of, you know, sometimes they're in front of camera. That's up to them. You know, we're not trying to keep them out of the frame or anything. So it's a family affair when we film the grannies.
But I like that part, even if you don't get to see them, because like they're kind of like the cheerleaders. There was one, I think it's the son, you know, when I can't remember what the name of the pasta is. You can tell me when they push it through the thing that's like a potato
Oh, pastatelli.
Yeah. And he's like, you can do it. And I'm thinking, she's 90 something years old. Maybe she needs a little help, but she did it. Just incredible.
Yeah. So for Dora, I mean, I think that kind of strength needed to push the dough through. It's remarkable. That's why she's 96, as she's still got this great grip.
So
and she had this great workout.
So humbling. So what has been the reaction? Because first of all, you're a foreigner doing this. I'd like to know first, you know, from the grannies, the nonne, how do they feel about this? You're documenting this and preserving it.
I suppose that most of our women view it in personal terms. I mean, so they're delighted to be invited. They're a bit, perhaps, it's dangerous to generalize, but they're a bit hazy about YouTube. So it's usually because it's come through, you know, the family, and they say, oh, please, you know, share this recipe. They're delighted to be invited. They're delighted to share their recipe. Delighted to be interviewed. And that's how it works. Yeah. And as for me, yes, I mean, there are some Italians who go, why? I mean, you know, the way that Pasta Grannies is reported in Italy is completely different to how it's reported outside. And there's always this sort of element of incredulity that anybody would bother with filming their grandmothers. and then there's this thing of, and it's a foreigner. And I always say, well, it's because Italians are so passionate about their local food cultures that they don't always see the bigger picture. So if you talk to someone in Liguria, they're not remotely interested in what happens in Calabria, and vice versa.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So you know that you'll get hugely knowledgeable people everywhere, all over Italy, about, you know, the gastronomies and the cultures of Italy. But someone who takes a helicopter view is less. It sometimes it takes an outsider to see all of it. And of course, you know, if there are Italians who want to do something about, you know, baking or whatever, then I would support them in any way I could. It's not that I'm sort of setting myself up as the expert or anything. It's just something I started to do, and this is how it's turned out. So
that's great. And so do you think through this, you might actually inspire a more recent generation of Italians to make an effort to try? Because I'm sure it's hard. I mean, Italy is no different than North America or anywhere else, where, you know, careers and the whole family structure has changed so much.
Yes. I don't know if I can speak for people about what they'd like to do. It's quite hard work doing YouTube. I mean, one other thing about YouTube is, you know, of course, it's sort of where your audience is affects how much money you get. I mean, this is quite technical stuff for your audience. You may not want to put this in, but
actually, I mean, if I could we could pause. What I meant was inspiring a younger generation of Italians, not so much to make YouTube, but to make pasta. Like to continue, because you can go to a supermarket in Italy and get great quality. You can go to an artisan. You know.
Yeah.
Why would you do it yourself?
Yeah. So in Italy, you would now get pasta shops, and you can go and buy your pasta, and it'll be exceptionally good pasta. So what's changing is people have choice. So for the generation that I film, they did not have choice. To make pasta, you had to make it. I mean, to eat pasta, you had to make pasta. And you needed the disposable income to buy dried pasta. So it was a middle-class aspiration at one point to eat dried pasta. And that's what's changed since the Second World War. So there's a generation of women at the same time who've gone out to work and who absolutely wanted to leave the experience of their mothers and grandmothers behind. So these women are now working and don't want to go back to that. They're worried about their figures for whatever reason. we all know that pasta in itself isn't bad for you. It's the lifestyle that you have that affects it. And so what's changing is that I think more men are getting involved with it. There's a pasta making school in Faenza for local people, and it's boys who come along because they want to impress the girls with their pasta making skills. So I think, so that's what's, yes. And I think if people want to get into pasta making, they professionalize it. They kind of, they'll set up the pasta shop or they'll work in a restaurant or something like that. So that's what's changed. It's ceased to be a domestic tradition.
Right. But still, it sounds like from what you've observed, it's still a tradition that continues, but just in a very different way. So these grannies will obviously move on in this life. But the thing is, you feel that there's still a great way for the tradition itself, as it originally was, to be preserved.
I think it changes slightly as well. I mean, so it's very easy to make pasta and become quite competent quite quickly, but the kind of Zen master level of really good pasta making does take years of practice. So I think that's what's kind of more, you'll see fewer people being able to do that.
Right.
And certainly not in the home. I think what I've found is when you go to America, the pandemic completely sort of wrecked filming outside Italy, and even in Italy. But, even if you go to North Italy or Northern Italy at the Veneto or Lombardy, or if you kind of visit women in New Jersey, if you can get out of the kitchen, if you can down tools and spend your time doing something else, people will. And so the skills fall off a cliff. That they lose it very quickly. So we're filming women who are sort of, rural communities, what are the contadina, the market gardener kind of, where they've worked hard all their lives and are still sort of growing their own produce and that kind of thing. So you mentioned cucina povera. I think that's a misleading description. Okay. So for me, it's cucina rustica.
Right.
So because a lot of the things that we film are actually not, you are for celebrations and for special occasions. Pasta was on Sundays. It was often a diet of just pulses and vegetables and things like that. The assumption that pasta was there every day is erroneous. And if you grew your own wheat, then of course you had the flour to make pasta. But if you didn't have your own wheat fields, you had to have the money to buy it. So pasta wasn't all given.
That's great. Do you make pasta
suddenly
yourself?
We're into kind of the whole sociological aspects of it, but
we don't need to go there. That's okay.
No.
So do you make pasta yourself?
I do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not very often because, when one's a producer and a director and a writer and everything else, you don't get much time to do. Same reason that, the daughters of the women we film don't have time. Right. But I certainly enjoy making pasta. I think it's very therapeutic. I prefer to use the mattarello, the rolling pin, rather than a machine. I think that whole thing of rolling it out is actually very straightforward, but it's a nice thing to do. It's a very soothing thing to do, and that gives me pleasure. And don't worry about the sfoglia, the pasta sheet. You can have fun with making spaghetti, they're called pici, or you can have fun making cavatelli. These things are quite quick and easy and fun to make. Pasta is fun.
Yes. And we could talk about your book then. Let's talk about your book, because the first few pages are exactly that. You're talking about, it doesn't take complicated materials. You might not find, let's say I'm in the United States, the exact same types of wood, but you give some options, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So until you know that you're absolutely going to make pasta very often, just get yourself a bit of plywood. Thick marine plywood, this thick, and make sure get a carpenter to put a lip on along one long edge, and make sure it fits your kitchen counter or your table, and that is fine. It'll be a beech or a maple. Beech, I think, will be the covering to the plywoods, and that is all you need. I mean, I would say, the woods that you use are all that our women. They're almost like sort of heritage items. They were made by their grandpas or their husbands. Right. It could be chestnut, it can be beech, it can be poplar, cherry. So there's lots of a lovely range of woods that and then they get heavy. And then the other thing is that they get kept. There are all sorts of ways of keeping them, because when you've got a thing that's 90 centimeters wide, it's not an easy thing to stow away. So they're often kept under the table. Under the table top, there's a special sort of hanging drawer for your board.
That makes sense. That's really good. That's a good idea.
So that becomes a whole different production. First buy your table, then adapt it.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to try something out. I've done the gnocchi. I have yet to do the pasta. And I was actually thinking about getting the piece that goes onto the KitchenAid. But then after reading your book, I was just like, oh, I should try this just with a piece of wood.
Yes, I mean,
and see what happens.
I think those electric attachments are great fun. And if you think you're going to make it a lot, the pasta a lot, then go for it. If the most important thing is, are you cooking from scratch? I mean, do you have the time to do that? If so, do it. And if that enthuses you, if that kind of gets you in front of the cooker, go for it. Don't let the fear or anxiety around, I've got to do a sfoglia, a pasta sheet, stop you from making pasta. Find a different shape. Find something that you enjoy.
No, definitely. That is good advice. And I'm sure many people, and I think for any of us who want to try it, it's kind of like you were saying, it in the case of the grannies, it was like affordability. But I think for us, like, for example, Sunday or Saturday might be, my personal day to cook, or it's going to be over the holidays. So, that's good advice. You don't necessarily need the machine. Just go for it and choose the right pasta shape.
Yes.
So let's talk about your book. This is the second one.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, tell us a little bit of history behind the idea of the book.
Okay, so book one was in response to the channel going viral. It became hugely popular, sort of pretty much in about a month. I thought there was something wrong with my YouTube channel. The figures were going up. So
wow, from the month from when you started? Wow.
Yes. It was just like, whoa. And so that, meant there was a demand for it. And I think people, enjoy having something to read and refer as the actual YouTube channel. And they want the details written down so that they can follow the recipe. So what we've done with the second book, so this is all new recipes, and it's a slightly broader range of recipes. It includes risottos, it includes pizza, it includes those sorts of things. And these things using get friends together. And this time we have QR codes so that if you are looking at the book and you want to be reminded about how Maria makes her tagliatelle, you can click on, you can scan it with your you can then sort of look at the video on your laptop or your so that's So that's what we're, so that's the idea behind that. And the recipes are chosen for, there are one or two more demanding things there. But mostly they're chosen for, you know, they're sort of crowd pleasing. They're the popular videos that have been turned in, have been selected.
And the photography is beautiful.
Yes.
Like
yes.
it just so much. It's just like the channel. So do you have a photographer on the site when you're shooting then?
No. So. No, Lizzie Mayson is the photographer for book 2. And what we did was we shot the food photography in Italy, and then we gave her a grand tour. We did a whistle-stop tour of grandmothers, and we tried to get as many photographed as possible, because it's not all, we can't do all of them.
Right.
So that's how we did the photography for the book. Yeah.
That's amazing. And how long did it take you to write it?
I'd say about 3 months.
Oh, really? So as you go through this, I mean, you're documenting everything then? I mean,
yes.
Between the recipes and the history?
So the easiest thing, and they say that, so I sort of make notes as I'm filming, so that if I do use it another time, I haven't got it completely from, you know, I'm not sort of just looking at the video going, oh, what was that?
Right.
And then the other thing that happens is Julia Griner and her husband Pino did all the recipe testing. So we sort of, we you know, there are approximations of grandmothers do not measure out, sort of take that pancetta, we mean it. But having said that, I think, you know, if you want to change your stocking on your door, I think it's up to you to find the flavor that you want.
That's great. So do you think there'll be a part 3?
Yes, I'm still recovering from part 2. I think there's a great deal of pleasure from it, and yes, watch this space. We'll have to see. I have to negotiate with my husband. He, you know, I'm sort of in. It's like we are on. You know, Pasta Grannies is a full-time job, and then there's writing the book on top of it. So it sort of took up weekends and evenings, and so it was. I'm not complaining, but it was quite a full-on task to do, and yes, you basically. You have to banish me to us.
I don't need you to think through it. And I think the book is so new. You've got enough to do. If you like, first of all, just read it just for personal pleasure, and then, you know, take the challenge, because it is a challenge. I mean, you have to think, you know, the recipe and the ingredients and things like that. So you got a lot to work through for book 2. So we won't even think about book 3.
No, let's not talk about it. It's like I love writing. You know, that's I should stress that I adore writing. I mean, that's the starting point of all this, was that I love writing. So the thing that really, really sort of gives me huge pleasure is being able to give voice to the women, and tell their stories. I'd say that I'm on the sort of food anthropology end of things. The actual recipes are important. The food stylist thing, but that's not what floats my boat. The actual recipe, it's actually these women, their experiences, and it's always a great privilege to be able to share that. I mean, you know, with their agreement, of course. So that's the really lovely thing about writing the book.
Of course, I see that. That's incredible. So, as you know, we are, this section of the magazine is called Chat with an Expat, and it rhymed, and it was cute and caught on, but not everybody likes to say that. So first of all, do you consider yourself an expat, or would you call yourself something else as a person who is, part of the time living in Italy?
I do not consider myself as an expat. I consider myself to be a migrant.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sort of describes someone who's on a salary with a multinational that posts them somewhere else in the world. And it's a kind of slightly other status, whereas I think that I've moved to Italy, I'm therefore a migrant along with everybody else. So that's how I see myself.
Okay, that's a good answer. So when you're in Italy, is there anything that you miss about London, or vice versa?
Well, you see, I always say that I have the best of both worlds because I'm always Sempre and giro, and so I'm never away from either to miss anything. I mean, so I have a lovely time in London and I have a wonderful time in Italy. So I have the perfect life.
I love that. Sempre in giro.
Yeah.
Which means always
coming and going.
Yes. That's the perfect life. I love that. Yes. Yeah. You have the best of both worlds. That is so good. And so what about the plans for the future? Do you think you might spend more time in Italy?
With grandchildren, I think we won't ever be full-time in Italy. I definitely, once my husband retires, we will spend as much time as possible in Italy. So I think we're in a fortunate position at the moment that we don't have to make those kinds of decisions. We'll just have to see how it goes. But that's, I'd moved to Italy, so that's where I always hoped to be. So
you would personally like to move and spend more time there?
Yes. But you're tied to family rather than a place. So I think, I wouldn't like to say, I don't want to sort of box myself into a corner in terms of those kinds of decisions. But at the moment, we have a perfect balance. So long may that live.
Yes, of course. All right. So what about the channel? Where do you see yourself in the next decade?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm nearly 64. I suppose I can be working for another 10 years. Why not?
Well, if grannies are doing it.
Exactly. I'm always amazed. I'm very humble that the channel continues to grow. So there's this kind of idea around, do we, film Greek yayas? Do we film more Italian from, the different Italian communities around the world, like America and Australia? Also Canada. So that would be fun to do. So that's one option. And certainly I'm sure that will happen. I also want to do a documentary series, so hopefully that will happen. I also want to set up a foundation. Hopefully that will happen. So I've got, 10 years should do it.
You can do it. If you've come this far in that amount of time, I think what you've done is amazing. And it's so understandable why Vicky has so many fans. And I think it's just a beautiful gesture to tradition and history as well. Well, it's more than a gesture. I don't mean it like gesture, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes, I'm very conscious of the privilege that I have. I'm still consumed by it. I don't get bored meeting women. There's nothing about what I do that I find tedious or, it's like, another granny or anything. It's never, ever like that. It's always an adventure and a privilege and a joy to meet these wonderful women. So I'm very blessed in that way.
Definitely. Well, of course, we'll put all of the links in including, the book link where you can get it. And you're so easy to find, Pasta Grannies, but obviously she is on YouTube. I can't emphasize enough, even though she has 888,000 subscribers plus today, be the other +1. It's so important. Like we talk about is just, we are constantly, people that come to YouTube, they have a passion project, kind of like our magazine. So, it only takes a plus and a like to help them. It makes the biggest difference. So if you're reading or watching this, please go ahead and do it. Don't just watch the videos. Do, like I said, subscribe. And same with Facebook and Instagram, because our daily battle on all social media platforms is the algorithm, and it doesn't cost us anything. It's just a like. I always say that every like counts. So look for Pasta Grannies. And we are Live in Italy magazine. It's www.liveinItalyMag.com. And like Pasta Grannies, you just look up Live in Italy Mag, take the azine part out. And I want to thank any of you who have come to this channel. Obviously, we weren't expecting it to do anything, but some videos have done really well. And then, of course, if you want more interviews, go to the magazine. So, Vicky, thank you for your time and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for inviting me.